Probably online.
Yeah.
We're waiting for one more participant to come in, so we're waiting a little bit until she gets here. Thank you. Morning, the meeting will come to order. Welcome all. The June 14th, 2023 Palm Springs Development Project Management Team meeting is now in session at 9:15 a.m. I am Scott Atkins, Director of the West Valley Education Centers for College of the Desert. Together with Robert Rauscher, Project Manager of the Palm Springs Development Project for the Moss Companies, the College Bond and Construction Management Firm, I serve as co-chair of the project management team and lead these meetings on behalf of the college. Ricardo, will you please call roll?
Lynn Pack,
Here.
Rita Lamb,
Here.
Scott Atkins,
Here.
Robert Rauscher,
Here.
Daniel Porras.
Daniel could not make the meeting today, but he has given us his comments that will be put in the record for today's meeting. We appreciate his involvement and his feedback that we received from him and the city of Desert Hot Springs. Thank you. Let's all please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can see it. Confirmation of the agenda. Members of the project management team, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions from the agenda for June 14th, 2023? No. Hearing none, the agenda stands as presented. 3.01, public comment. Now is the time for public comments. The Board of Trustees directed all meetings of the project management team to be public, subject to the Brown Act. Public comments are welcome. Public participation is allowed and will be accepted in person by email to psdp-pmt@collegeofthedesert.edu and read into the record during the public comment, or remotely by using the raise your hand function joining the Zoom link. There is a time limit of 3 minutes per person. All comments must be submitted or brought forward prior to the end of the public comments section. Ricardo, are there any public comments via email?
No.
Are there any public comments in person?
No.
Are there any in Zoom?
Yes. David?
Thank you. My name is David Powell. I am a resident of Palm Springs and a neighbor to this project. I want to first thank the group for the Palm Springs meeting that was held last week. I will stay consistent and say that it's unfortunate that this was not until a week prior to the final meeting. And I am hoping it'll be brought up during the presentation if any of the impact by or the feedback by the people there was included in this final draft of the project. Again, also, I'd like to mention that I think it's a little unfortunate that public comment is only at the beginning of this meeting before the project reports, because we learn so much as the architects and the designers are presenting it, that we can see what the actual changes are, what the actual explanation is, and then are able to comment on that. That was done in Palm Springs meeting and it worked out well. I'd also request that somewhere in this meeting, the final meeting, that you explain the remainder of the approval process, who approves it, what the process is going to the state, does the city of Palm Springs have any input or authority, etc. One thing that from seeing the schematics from this week is that there still is a concern with the Farrell driveway in the middle. It doesn't seem like there is a turn lane or anything that's going into that driveway, which a number of people in the neighborhoods were against. And I'm hoping that that is a very busy street, 2 lanes each way. And the last thing is, let it be clear, we want the project. We just want to make sure that there is as little impact as possible to the city, the neighborhoods, and those traveling around the project. That is the most important thing. And if it takes a little longer on the design and a little more cost or whatever, which, well, I understand the cost issue with the district, but if it does change there, I think it's important because this project will hopefully be around a very, very long time. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there additional comments?
Yes. Laura Jackson?
All right. Hello, I'm Laura Lee Jackson, Assistant Professor of Media Production at College of the Desert. I oversee the film, radio, television, journalism, and mass communication programs. 4 unique areas of study that, when housed together in Palm Springs, will open many unique opportunities for students in the surrounding community. We offer a variety of degree and certificate options, multiple career options. And this new facility in Palm Springs will allow us to provide our students with more excellent education, basic skills, and practical application using state-of-the-art studio software and equipment. Over the past several months, our faculty have provided input in planning the West Valley campus. Our advisory board, comprised of industry leaders, has weighed in as well with their suggestions on how we best train students in a proper learning environment to prepare them for good jobs in the industry. They have helped us create curriculum, and we have relied heavily on their input in developing this new facility. We are working with professionals to make sure to share space for outside film productions, create new business opportunities for locals hoping to produce podcasts, short films, video, and our community television programming. And due to its location, we'll have close ties to the Palm Springs International Film Festival, the Palm Springs International Short Fest, Palm Springs Life Magazine, Desert Sun, KESQ News Channel 3, NBC Palm Springs, and the list goes on, many of which we have already partnered with. Our students are already interning and in many cases getting job in these industries. I'm happy to report that currently there are 7 full-time employees working at KESQ who are former COD media students. And others are working at Alpha Media, Palm Springs Life, Acrisure Arena, NBC Palm Springs, other film production companies. We look forward to creating more relationships in Palm Springs and the surrounding community. During the pandemic, we learned how to make education more accessible for all students. As a result, our program is offering more online and hybrid learning options. And this is great for students living throughout the Valley and beyond who want to study media at COD. Location and commuting should never be an issue. We have designed our schedules with this in mind and will continue to find new ways to make this program accessible to everyone, regardless of where they live. The facilities you see today are highly integrated into the coursework of the program's curriculum and the operation of student media outlets. We believe these designs adequately reflect the needs of our program. We are confident that a facility like this will enable us to provide world-class, industry-standard experience for all of our students here in the Coachella Valley and beyond. Thank you.
Any others?
Yes. Dan Taylor?
Good morning. My name is Dan Taylor. I run the Riverside County Film Commission. And I'd like to say that we are in support of this project. We think it's a great opportunity for the students. It's a great opportunity for Greater Palm Springs. In the last 3 years, the Greater Palm Springs area received just shy of $9.5 million of economic impact from filming. And having a facility like this and having students who are able to graduate with skills that could put them into this industry and work locally in this industry will greater benefit the region when it comes to the economic impact garnered from the film industry. So I just wanted to say that we are fully in support of this project, and we would like to see it move forward in a way for the film industry.
Thank you. Any others?
No, additional.
Anyone from the audience? Please come up and state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Dan Spencer. Thank you very much. Dan Spencer, speaking on behalf of the PSAA, Palm Springs Architectural Alliance. And the background for this is that a previous scheme provided a vertical separation of vehicular and pedestrian zones. Due to cost, that vertical separation no longer exists. The current scheme shows a conflict between pedestrian and vehicles, especially at the entrance from Farrell. The following recommendations are what we would like to see. eliminate the entry road, reducing cost and congestion, and the in and out movement on Farrell. Move the mobility hub numbers to create a central drop-off for students. Given the central location, this significantly reduces pedestrian distance. Create a central covered plaza as the iconic entry to the campus, maintaining mountain views and encouraging interaction and connection for students of different programs. Key campus auto entry is provided at Tockwitz and Sunset Signals at the intersection of the northwest corner of the campus, with secondary entrance off of Baristo. Provide a main road that provides access to all parking from the west, and a landscape buffer separates the drop-off should be created to support the need of the students. And create a pedestrian-only landscape open space park between the eastern edge of the campus parking lots and the main buildings. And the open space would include the amphitheater, outdoor dining, and shaded study areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ricardo, any others?
Vinny?
Hey, hello, everybody. My name is Vinny Sasso, an adjunct film instructor at College of the Desert. I've had the privilege of being so since 2014, and the greater privilege and pleasure of working with an amazing group of people over this amount of time to build this film program, one that I think any school would be proud to have. We have, Laura Lee really just said everything, and Dan really capped it off into the industry side of things. But there's a reason why I got into it and why I wanted to help build this program. And as a filmmaker, I know that it's important that we all have an opportunity to tell our stories. And I think in the Coachella Valley, the students here, really haven't had that chance. You have to take some courses and go off to some other big fancy school, some place that costs a lot of money to get a film education, to learn how to make films, to learn how to tell your stories. But we can do that right now, right here in Palm Springs. We're doing it now in PS4. We've got 14 film production courses that walk in the door and start to get work right away in a pool, as Dan said, that's growing every year, and will only grow more because we're going to be growing more students. And we don't want them to go away. We want them to stay in the Valley. So we have an AS degree. We have certificates. They can get their education and start working right here in the Coachella Valley and not take their talents off someplace else. So I think it is imperative that we build this facility. I am so pleased that we have been given as instructors and as an advisory board such a voice in helping to contour it, to make it organic to what our program is and does and how it functions. And I will continue to do anything I can, as I'm sure everybody else that we've been working with will, to make sure that facility is up and running someday very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Well, I want to thank everyone for your public comments. Please know your comments have been received and recorded as part of the public record. As a part of the introduction, I want to spend a few moments before we get to the design presentations on the direction for the project management team. As most of you are aware, the idea of and plans for the West Valley campus in Palm Springs have had a long history. We are here today to focus solely on the Desert Community College District Board of Trustees action and direction taken on February 16, 2023. It is this action that created the project management team you have here today and has driven the process and the agenda of our meetings. Just 4 months ago, a process which included the purchase of an abandoned Palm Springs Mall property in 2018, the completion of a master plan for the project in 2020, and consideration of multiple studies and possible scenarios, the trustees reviewed 2 schematic design options for the Palm Springs campus. Ultimately, the board selected and voted to approve the Palm Springs Development Project schematic design developed in March March 22nd, 2021. Directing staff to incorporate several adjustments and expedite the completion. This board action is why we're here today. In order to expedite the process, the board named Robert Rauscher, Moss Company's project manager for the Palm Springs Development Project, and me as co-chairs of these public meetings with the purpose of implementing the board action. Robert and I were both part of the design team that led the development of the schematic design selected and approved by the board. The board also directed staff to invite West Valley cities to designate one member each as a liaison to facilitate communications with their respective cities as the schematic design changes are incorporated. In addition, ongoing communications with faculty and staff, as well as industry and community partners, have provided valuable input and feedback to this project. Last week on June 7th, our project team member from the city of Palm Springs, Deputy City Manager Flynn Bagg, led a public listening session hosted by the Palm Springs Planning Commission commissioners. I would like to ask Flynn to provide a brief overview of the session. Flynn?
Thank you, Dr. Atkins. Appreciate that. As he has indicated, we did hold a community listening session last week. We invited members of the community to join us, and specifically we invited residents of the neighborhood surrounding the campus parcel to join us at that meeting and to provide input on the schematic design of the campus. What resulted is over 3 pages of comments from members of the community. I won't go through all of those today, but what I'll do is summarize those comments if you'll bear with me. I would say one of the chief concerns that was voiced at the meeting last week was relative to Farrell Drive, and in particular the campus driveway on Farrell Drive. Number one, they were interested in seeing if a traffic study would be completed as part of the campus development. There was also concern about the driveway into the campus being a 4-lane driveway and some of the issues that might result from conflicts with pedestrian traffic. Also looking at the pedestrian circulation as it crosses that driveway internally. The conflicts that may result from pedestrians and vehicles as they're entering from that driveway, and wanted to see those issues resolved. Speaking also of Farrell Drive, there was concern about the delivery truck traffic. As you're aware, we do have those service yards facing Farrell Drive, and so there were concerns about the traffic that would be generated by that. And so again, I think that the chief concern that was voiced by many who attended the meeting was relative to Farrell Drive, the traffic generated there and the configuration of the driveway, and suggested a number of proposed changes to that. You've also heard from the Palm Springs Architectural Alliance about their proposal to close the driveway on Farrell and put the mobility hub in that location instead and create a pedestrian plaza more or less in that area. There were also comments relative to the landscaping. I believe one of our slides that we had in previous sessions indicated that 50% of the materials would be drought tolerant and native. It was suggested that all of the materials should be drought tolerant with a greater emphasis on native plants. In addition, it was suggested that there should be more shade trees, drought tolerant shade trees in the parking lot areas to help mitigate the urban heat island effect there. Residents who live adjacent to the property, those who live on the west in the San Jacinto subdivision or Sunrise Park neighborhood, and then those on the east in the Vibe development, identified a number of specific concerns. Those who live on the west would prefer to see dense screening along the west property line. They were also concerned about buildings 4 and 5, the central utility plant and the maintenance facility, that those buildings and their associated activities might generate noise. They would like to see those moved further away from the west property line, if at all possible. Relative to those who live on the east, the Vibe subdivision, in addition to their concerns about traffic on Farrell, also voiced concerns about the height of the buildings on Farrell. One of the things I might suggest is that we do some type of a site section showing the distance of the buildings from the neighbors on the east side of Farrell Drive and how the height of the buildings may or may not impact their views. And so I think that might be something that's important to look at as well. There were comments about the number of parking spaces. Some thought it was too much, some thought it was too few. So I don't know that we came to any type of consensus about that. There was a comment about making sure that there's adequate parking around the Palm Springs Cultural Center, as well as concerns about making sure that there's adequate pedestrian circulation back and forth between the Cultural Center and the campus. In terms of the Tockwoods Canyon frontage, there was concern about the vacant portion that most likely will be part of a future phase of development. It was suggested that there should be some type of landscape treatment, or one of the more interesting comments was some type of a sculptural landform in that area, making use of maybe some type of mounding or things like that, and an artistic fashion might be a way to use that land in the interim. In terms of the building design and campus layout, there were concerns in terms of the overhangs, that the overhangs, while very generous, perhaps are too high to mitigate the sun as intended, and so it was recommended that be studied. There were also comments about the linear arrangement of the buildings, that it doesn't really give the sense of a feel of campus. And it was suggested that there should be some type of a commons or a quad, as is typically seen in campus design, to provide some type of a central hub for the students to gather instead of the very linear fashion that is designed as now. I'll just make my own personal comment. I think from an urban design standpoint, that was very intentional. I think it's very important that we do define the streetscape along Farrell Drive, but as was indicated from the public, it would be nice to have some type of a more common area or definition of a quad internally to the campus. One general comment that we had was for the project management team and for the board of trustees to consider housing as a future option as part of the campus design, that by integrating student housing, that would help to provide some type of a unified sense of campus and housing together for the students, and might be something that's very important considering the cost of housing in Palm Springs. Overall, the residents and those who attended the meeting were very supportive of the development of the campus, very supportive of the proposed architecture. So despite comments about Farrell and some of the other things, overall, very happy to see the development of the campus and want you all to get building as quickly as possible. That concludes my comments. Again, I would just identify that the Palm Springs Architectural Alliance has also submitted comments via a site plan that was sent via email, as well as other comments. And so with that, thank you very much, and appreciate the opportunity to have that listening session in Palm Springs.
Thank you, Flynn. I'd like to thank the city, the planning commissioners, and the city staff for hosting that session, and everyone who attended. We appreciate your input and your feedback, and I think you will see a lot of your feedback has been reflected in the presentations this morning, and some of that will be taken into consideration moving forward. Now I'd like to ask our co-chair, Robert Rauscher, to give a brief review of the steps taken to incorporate the Board of Trustees directed changes to the plan, and then introduce our project architects from WRNS Studio to present the final schematic design. Robert?
Thank you, sir. For the past several months, the design team for the Palm Springs campus has worked to continue the evolution of the schematic design from 2021. This has been an expedited process, certainly, to finalize the schematic design per the board's direction, and it incorporates specific changes. First, we removed the Learning Hotel from the project and incorporated spaces and building elements to support our planned architecture and hospitality programs. We then refined the spaces dedicated to culinary, healthcare, and digital media instruction. We also developed student services and support spaces that will serve as the backbone of the campus, supporting the college's immediate needs and providing for our future goals. Finally, We refined the site plan to create a gracious and complete campus that will function fully on day one, while reserving opportunities for future development as well. Further, consistent with our guiding principles and sustainability plans, we continue to work to make this a 100% electric campus. We're also designing the landscape to be 100% drought tolerant, not 50%, using native plant species and irrigation specifications that exceed the minimum 50% LEED standards for the project. We're also studying ways to reduce our overall parking needs and create greater permeability for water infiltration on site. We have been fortunate to receive feedback from both internal and external stakeholders. Thank you. And we've been able to incorporate their ideas, many of them at least, in the schematic design process. We will continue to seek their valuable input as we move into the next phase of this project. I'll say more about the next phase of the work later on in our meeting today. But for now, let me note that following this completion of schematic design, we will be revisiting the campus's environmental review process and impact report, including studies for parking, traffic, noise, and other technical analyses. But for now, as Mitch Fine, partner and project manager from WRNS, presents the final schematic design, I believe you will all see the impacts of your time and expertise reflected in the materials his team has produced. Mitch?
Thank you, Robert. Just a quick sound check. Is my voice okay? I'm going to be talking for a little bit. Let me just state at the outset that it's really a pleasure being here. So thank you very much for having me. On behalf of WRNS Studio and our entire consulting team, let me just say how profoundly proud and excited we are to be presenting the completion of schematic design today. The first phase of the design process, as Robert outlined. We have been honored to have been a part of this process and helping COD fulfill this very noble and aspirational mission of the project. So today we thought it would be fun to start off with an animated video fly-through of the campus with very little words at the outset. And I just want to say that we have really endeavored to try to create a campus and a sense of place here with one of the main narrative drivers being learning everywhere, both inside and outside the building, and all of it realized through a Palm Springs desert modernist aesthetic for the 21st century in terms of the planning and the programming and the learning environments and the overall student experience. So it's a short tour, it's about 90 seconds, and then we'll pick things up on the other side and then walk you through our thinking that went into the project. So let's hit it. Okay, next we're going to pull up our deck and I'm going to tour everyone through and provide as much thinking as I can. I'm going to use the laser pointer as much as I can. So if you're looking at the front of the screen, hopefully you'll get oriented to my words. So let's wait for that to come up. And we'll make sure I can advance it. And I can. Outstanding. Okay, so next is going to be a series of 3D renderings that are essentially still shots taken from various moments along the fly-through. Therefore, we can spend a little bit of time, we can pause on them and get everyone oriented and get everyone's bearings. So next, we begin with an aerial looking dead west to the San Jacinto Mountains, and here I can orient everyone to each building's position on the site. In the center of the screen, yes, there is the main vehicular entry, mid-block off Farrell, between Baristo and Tockwitz. To the left of the entry is the accelerator building, which is the main academic building, and I'm going to tour everyone through those plans here in just a little bit. To the right of the entry is the Culinary Institute, and then further right of that, on the end, we see this distinctive curved form of the event center, anchoring that corner position, providing presence to the community, and really a punctuation point at the end of the campus. One of the, we hope, iconographic elements of the project, hopefully is evident here, which is what we're calling the super roof, which is really this main organizing and gathering element under which the campus unfolds and creates a sense of shelter, also creating a sense of identity and unity throughout the entire campus. We like to think that this roof is both expressive and performative, and by performative, I mean there's going to be a vast array of photovoltaic panels on the roof that will provide 50% of the campus's energy. The roof is also going to provide a tremendous amount of shade or passive cooling, particularly along the western edge of the project. We all know that on hot sunny days, we're so much cooler to sit in the shade of a tree. So one could liken the super roof to basically a giant tree canopy that shelters the entire campus and cools it from the desert sun. And we're going to get a much more excellent sense of that sheltering notion when we see some upcoming shots. Okay, here is a site plan. We are now looking down on all the roofs of the buildings, showing each building's position on site. So just from a different perspective, again, I'll tour everyone through here. In general, the majority of the buildings are biased to the east side of the project, elongated along Farrell. The campus is then bisected again in two halves, essentially a north half and a south half by the entry room. If we begin at the southwest corner of the project, north is up on all these plans, and then we work our way up north. The southeast corner anchored by the accelerator. Again, that is the main academic building shown in number 1. The mobility hub currently, yes, is off Baristo. They're shown in number 6 for Sunline Transit, now incorporated under the super roof of the project for more integrated solution, relative than to previous solutions. We can now continue north on number 2 is the Culinary Institute, and then once again, the event center culminating the campus north to south, anchoring that northeast position on campus. The campus will be supported by a new central plant and maintenance and operations building on access with that main entry road and roundabout. Both buildings have essentially been combined and straddle a service yard, and that service yard in between the buildings so that the maintenance and operations building can serve as both a visual and an acoustical barrier to the adjacent neighborhood to the west. For further reference, the Palm Springs Cultural Center in the southwest corner of the site. All the residual areas in between the buildings occupied by parking, and I will say with lots of trees and landscaping to break up the expanses of asphalt, to provide shade for at least 50% of the parking areas, as well as bioretention areas to increase stormwater management. One note is that the lot directly north of the central plant is being conceived as gravel for additional stormwater management capability and also to help break up the large expanse of asphalt, and also a very cost-effective way to provide spillover parking for large events. North of that, this was mentioned, stretched along Farrell as a parcel of land not currently being used for development for phase 1 and not needed to help with parking. We're conceiving this as an interim landscape condition, but yes, it will be populated with native plantings requiring only irrigation for establishment. It means once the plants are established, they will not require any irrigation at all. We are also considering some sculptural mounding for this area using the spoils from the rest of the site. So there's no offall. So it's a very cost-effective way of keeping all the spoils on the site. Meandering along our tree line paths along Tockwitz, Farrell, and Baristo. And I'll speak more about pedestrian and bicycle circulation in a minute. So now, if we see these two blue letters on the right-hand side, A and B, that means our next two shots, we are now going to be looking at the east side of the accelerator. And here we are. So we are now at grade on the east side of Farrell, looking slightly southwest. We do understand that there is no back door to this campus, that every edge is public. We built an entry, a building entry from Farrell, from the Farrell side that will now feed into the building and through to the campus space beyond. And we'll show what that means in a couple shots here. On the second floor, one can see a big expanse of glazing. We're considering that a large bay window that expresses some of the upper level learning environments while offer a window to the community. Below that is the makerspace and generous opportunity once again to see learning on display from the Farrell sidewalks. To the left of that is one of the loading docks, but we have tried to be thoughtful about these loading docks with screening walls and landscaping, using the same precast panels on the main building. So the loading yard feels like it's an integrated part of the architecture and not so industrial and utilitarian in nature, and then introducing some vertical landscaping elements to help soften up that building edge. We've now moved a little bit north along Farrell to arrive at the main vehicular entry. We are now facing west. We wanted to create a very welcoming, gracious entry, framing the mountains and presenting a recognizable and memorable gateway experience. The gateway is flanked by two major program elements that allow for learning and activity to be readily visible on entry. To the left is the flat floor studio, and then to the right will be the demonstration kitchen. I'll explain these more a little bit further on down. That textured pattern you see is meant to be evocative of the patterns of bark on a palm tree for additional sun. Two iconic elements we hope begin to reveal themselves in this view. One I already mentioned, which is the super roof, again, that main organizing element under which the campus gathers and is sheltered. And then the second one, you can see in the middle here, these V-shaped columns that demarcate notable public moments. And we're calling these structural trees. And the branches extended to allow for large expanses of open space beneath, be they vehicular, like in this shot, or pedestrian, and we'll see that in some shots coming up. The entry road down to 1 lane in and 1 lane out. It used to be 2 lanes in and 1 lane out. So by narrowing it down, we're thinking that we're promoting reduced traffic flow. So it shouldn't feel like a heavily trafficked vehicular way. We do want the experience of the pedestrian to take priority over the cars. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more in detail in some shots later on. Okay, we're now looking at an enlargement of that entry road I just mentioned, and just some items to note. There are going to be pedestrian sidewalks that are parallel to the main entry road that connect to the sidewalks along Farrell, and then there'll be some landscape buffers in between those. There is a landscape median that soften up that sequence of entry, will also support a very generous monument sign. And then I just want to note again, this raised crosswalk here, and this is a really important detail for the project, that as one is walking along the western edges of these buildings, we'll just call that the promenade, you never step down off of that, step down off the curb, then cross the road, and then step back up to the curb. All those surfaces are coplanar. So we want someone walking to have a very consistent walkable experience, so the pedestrian is prioritized. Cars will yield to the pedestrians and not the other way around. If we now take a section through there, which is indicated by that red line, here we go. You can see the super roof sheltering up above our heads. There's this 9-foot wide center median, which will hold landscaping and that monument sign. Then you can see these 15-foot wide drive aisles. Again, 1 lane in, 1 lane out. Bike lanes also that would connect to the existing bike lanes along Farrell. And then these landscaped buffers before, that buffer, the pedestrian sidewalks from Farrell. Okay, so we're back to the site plan. This is going to be a constant theme through this presentation, to always reference the site plan for orientation. So note that letter C in the upper right-hand corner of the plan. So the next shot will be from the corner of Tockwitz and Farrell, looking at the event center. And here we are. We're now back down on the sidewalk on the east side of Farrell, at the corner of Tockwitz, looking southwest. That curved, textured, identifiable form of the event center in the foreground, and then the rest of the campus falling away to the south down the left-hand side of the page. We are proposing precast concrete panels to clad the event center, sized to maintain the civic scale of the building while providing a texture that can catch light and provide dramatic shadows as the sun tracks around that curved volume, almost like a big sundial. There's a great signing moment here, literally with the monument sign at the bottom right, clearly announcing to passersby along Farrell that you've arrived at COD, and hopefully imprinting that textured curved volume in people's heads and creating a sense of memory and identity. We're now back to referencing the site plan, and now you can see that letter D in the lower center of the screen, setting up the next view of the entire western edge of the campus. And here we are. So we are now looking east. The mountains are to our back. We've now swooped in to see the campus and hopefully all its expansive appeal underneath that super roof, and really animated by all these exterior gathering opportunities that populate the entire western edge of the building. We're going to be zooming in closer in a minute so I can get a little bit more detail about what that means, and I can explain a little bit more about the architecture. And of course, the campus wants to be a friendly community neighbor to the Palm Springs Cultural Center. So envisioned here in this rendering is one of the monthly vintage markets taking place. And on a personal note, my wife can't spend enough time at these markets. Well, yeah, exactly. Just another quick note about parking while we're here in the tour ground. Yes, there's going to be enough trees to shade 50% of the parking areas to meet code, actually exceed code and break up these large expanses of asphalt, but also express a lot of the site sustainable strategies that we are deploying, like stormwater retention, native plantings, reduced heat island effect, EV charging stations. So once again, learning is going to be everywhere, including the parking lots. There's also going to be a hierarchy of tree-lined walkways that bring people from their cars to the four main entrances of the buildings. So walkers can enjoy a shade canopy as they walk through the lots to the front doors of these buildings. And so if we're to cut a section through what one of those might be, here we go. And so of note of this section, there's a 6 foot wide walkway that will be straddled by 10 foot wide planter areas and then the parking spots. So very generous amounts of landscaping to break up the fields of asphalt and promote a pleasant pedestrian experience, a shaded experience as you walk to the main entries of the building. Once again, we're imagining there's going to be lots of signage and diagrams along the way explaining the sustainable strategies, and I just named a couple of them: native plantings, on-site stormwater management, recycled water for irrigation, reduced heat island effect, and EV charging stations. Okay, back to a site plan. We now see that blue E at the bottom center of the plan. We're now setting up the next view of the southern edge of the accelerator and the mobility hub. And here we are. We are now standing on Baristo, looking slightly northeast. The super roof really now presenting itself, making a gracious porch entry to the south. The end condition, as I mentioned earlier, doubling as the mobility hub canopy for buses. Sunline Transit has requested 3 bus bays, as one can see. Center screen behind another textured volume, a recall of that palm tree bark pattern, is the accelerator lab. I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in a second, but we really consider that space the functional beating heart of the campus, visible from all angles. So immediately upon entry to the campus, one can already begin to see learning and activity on display. Here's an enlarged plan of the southern edge of the site along Baristo, and that red line is setting up a section cut through the mobility hub concourse. The super roof will be overhead, and then there's going to be a minimum of 20 feet wide, a landscape buffer between the buses and the shaded seating. We are imagining additional shading provided by a line of trees to further shade people from the southern and western sun. I can say that our team is currently conducting an extensive sun path study to confirm the shading of the sun and track its path throughout the course of the day and through the seasons. We're then going to be converting those studies into what we call a heat mapping analysis, so we can better understand human comfort while people are waiting for the bus. And again, this is going to be for all seasons. So we understand that the super roof is high. We want to make sure that it's functional. These studies are absolutely being conducted right now. Okay, here's a section through the streetscapes at the north edge of the project along Farrell, as well as the east edge of the campus. So of note, there'll be 6 foot wide planting areas separating the existing streets and bike lanes from this 12 foot wide shared use path for both bikes and pedestrians. And all of these dimensions and this configuration is consistent with the campus master plan guidelines that were established in 2020. The campus is being designed to be very pedestrian and bicycle friendly. So of note, all the bike entries that will be connecting to existing bike lanes on the surrounding streets. There's a main shared use path for both bikes and pedestrians that stretches the entire western perimeter of the buildings. That will be populated with 5 nodes of bike parking. As I mentioned earlier, there's also going to be these 4 main pedestrian walkways that take people from their cars to the 4 main entries of the buildings, heavily lined with trees to provide shade and populated, as I said before, with some signs and plaques to talk about sustainable strategies on the site. Okay, once again, referencing the site plan, we can now see the blue letters F and G on the plan. We're now setting up views to the western side of the accelerator and the Culinary Institute. We are now back down to grade. We are now looking east towards Farrell. So this is the opposite view of the main entry off Farrell. So our backs are to the mountains. We're now beginning to see this collection of different learning and community spaces underneath the great roof. Left of center is the flat floor studio that I spoke of. Again, under that textured pattern sunshade system on the glass. And that sunshade system really necessary just because the super roof is just not as deep in this area. Together with the culinary demonstration theater, which is across the road, just left of sight, you can't see it in this shot, creating this memorable gateway, establishing and seeing learning and activity on display to cars, bikes, pedestrians, both entering and leaving the campus. That curved form right of center is the film screening room, which we're proposing to be glazed in a green terracotta tile for a nice pop of vibrant color, something fun, introducing a little Palm Springs whimsy, if you will. Right of the screening room is the main open space, the heart of the campus. This is something in response that we are essentially considering a quad for the campus, and I'll show a shot of that in a second. Left of center, right there on the left-hand side of the screen is this raised crosswalk that I talked about. Once again, trying to prioritize, the pedestrian. Cars yield to pedestrians, not the other way around. So there's going to be flashing, blinking lights, there's going to be signs. Once again, a pedestrian walking stays at that consistent level as they traverse the road. Okay, we've now turned our heads further north and walked a bit. On the far right-hand side of the slide here is the Culinary Institute dining room. Once again, recalling that Palm Mark sunshade system. Just left of that, and that red interior branding wall is the building entry that will lead to the Hospitality Institute. Just left of that, in green, we see the exterior dining and events plaza that joins with the main events center, which is to the left of the screen, reintroducing this green glazed terracotta tile for a sense of unity across this long campus. And there we see the event center on the far left-hand side. Great presence to the community from the corner of Clackwoods and Farrell. Very prominent location, as I said before, a punctuation point at the end of the campus. And the event center is organized with its own great porch and an events lawn looking across to the mountains. And I'm going to talk more about that events lawn in a second. Okay, back to the site plan. Now we see this blue H, the lower right-hand corner. We're now setting up the next view of the main campus entry court. And here we are, facing east, heading into the main building entry. We can now see the super roof really flying over our heads. Really think this is going to be a very active, glorious space on the campus, gathering up a wide variety of social and learning spaces beneath both interior and exterior. It is here along the western edge of the building where the roof is doing most of its work, providing shade. Inside those main entry doors, there we go. One can begin to see what we're calling a theater stair or a stadium stair, supporting all kinds of social activities. So individuals enjoying mountain views or groups of people pausing between classes to socialize. So we're envisioning a very blurry line here between inside and outside, large expanses of glass separating the two. So inside and outside space all gather together into one large open heart of the campus, all under the protective shade of the super roof. We're envisioning this as a sort of 21st century interpretation of a Palm Springs Desert Monitors entry court, but upscale for the size of the campus. And another thing to note, we are imagining great opportunities for public art, digital art, great sense of wayfinding to help animate that space, provide color and interest to everyone who's walking into the building. Okay, we are now going to turn our sights to the floor plans and I'm going to provide a high-level overview of really just the main spaces and adjacencies. So the accelerator is proposed as a 2-story building With all the major departments here indexed on the upper left-hand corner of the screen, the colors of the departments correlate to the plans. To reemphasize one of the central themes I've been discussing is this notion of learning everywhere. The planning has been developed to provide a lot of visibility into the learning environments throughout the entire building. And it's all set up by what we're calling this learning spine, which is this main circulation corridor that travels north to south on both floors of the building. And so let's begin at the south, and once again, we'll head north, starting with level 1 on the right-hand side. So this dark pink rectangle is the student health center, so students can get medical and mental health counseling services. This to the left of that, this light blue area to the right is the digital media arts department, including TV studio, editing rooms, etc. State-of-the-art facilities for recording and production, music and film. To the left, I'm having trouble with this pointer, right there is the accelerator lab. This is going to be a very paper flexible, technology infused space supporting a variety of learning modalities, PCs, printers, Macs. Students can work independently or instructors can hold classes there. It'll accommodate 200 computer stations, including some tutoring and study rooms. It is a double height space, so students on a level 2 balcony will be able to overlook the lab and really get a sense and feel of being in the culture of that space. And we'll show some sections through there in just a little bit. To the right of that, in orange across the hall, are the testing labs supporting proctored exams with associated support spaces. Just to the north of that in tangerine is proposed food bank, and it's supporting office spaces. To the right of that in dark blue is an administrative suite. As we continue to walk north, this sort of white square is that stadium stair I talked about. Once again, supporting social gatherings so people can enjoy views of the mountains while hanging out individually or in groups. Really the heart of the building that conjoins with that exterior entry court. Continuing north in that tangerine color is the cafe grab and go, so people can pick up prepared foods and enjoy them inside or outside. This yellow color here is the maker space, really a robust space for making, as the name would imply. 3D printers, laser cutters, tools, paint booth, lots of infrastructure to enable students to be very creative and prototype ideas. Across the hall is, in that hatch pattern, a 3-pack of flexible classrooms that can also support 3 cohorts of the architecture school. When we talk about the learning environments, about how they've been planned in this building, we refer to them as 2-packs, 3-packs, and 4-packs, meaning that they all have movable walls that subdivide them for ultimate flexibility. This light blue egg shape there is the film screening room that supports 55 people in fixed rate seats for films, lectures, live presentations, and then culminating the accelerator on the ground floor, that yellow rectangle at the top, is the flat floor studio, which includes retractable seating for 150 people for auditorium style programs like films and lectures, or the seats can be retracted for a flat floor to set up the space for things like career events, career fairs, art exhibitions, student displays, what have you. Okay, let's now head up to level 2. Again, we're going to begin south and head north. The bulk of the flexible instructional classrooms are up here on level 2, beginning with a 2-pack on the far south. Just north of that are 2 science labs, 2 rooms configured for science education, biology, and chemistry. Just north of that, in this pink color, are the skills and simulation labs for the Center of Excellence for Healthcare, so students can receive hands-on instruction. Just north of that, we can now see in white, is that stadium stair. Flanking the stair to the north is the radio station, and then culminating the north is a 4-pack of flexible classrooms with movable walls, creating a variety of scales for a variety of classes and teaching styles, from lectures to group-based learning to hybrid instruction, all of it. This gray area on the left is a very large outdoor terrace to also support outdoor learning and gathering opportunities. And that syncs up with the top of the screening room, which has a tiered roof on top of it to support other modes of gathering and lectures. And yes, once again, all under the protective shade of the super roof. Now, this black line means that we're getting ready to cut a section through the building. It's almost like we take a bandsaw, cut the building in half, so we can show some of the key vertical relationships and adjacencies. So here we are. We've now cut through the accelerator at the main entry stair and the main entry volume. So to the left is the double height volume of the main entry, and to the right is the double height volume of the stadium stair, and it's about 35 feet to the underbelly of that roof. Both spaces separated by this glass wall, so indoor and outdoor exterior spaces conjoin, as I mentioned before, to feel like one large Orchis daylit space, the heart of the building. To the left, we can also begin to see one of those structural tree columns I had mentioned, this time demarcating main entry, sheltering this great entry court, which supports, as I mentioned before, outdoor learning and gathering. This is a shot. We are now at the top of that main entry stadium stair. We're now facing west, really getting a great sense of that double height space that slips outside through this glass wall, setting up really spectacular views of the San Jacinto Mountains. From everyone hanging out on the stair, to the left is a shared use conference room, so one can see activity taking place. To the right, you can almost see it, there's an on-air sign for the radio station, so one can look through a glass wall and right into one of the broadcast rooms. Okay, we have stayed upstairs. We've moved a little bit further west. We're now outside on an exterior balcony. We're now looking west to enjoy the presence of the mountains and the overall experience of the place. We're now looking down and across that large open entry court of the campus I spoke of earlier. If one was to turn to the right and walk along the second floor balcony, you'd then be led to a cluster of those learning environments I mentioned earlier, that floor pack, and then the exterior porch, and then the top of the screening room. Back to a plan for orientation, we're now going to cut a section here, which is going to be through the accelerator lab. Okay, so here we are. To the left is the double height volume of the accelerator lab with this interior mezzanine or balcony floating within it. Really get a sense of that big volume. Again, it's 35 feet to the underside of that roof. So people standing on this balcony can look left and down into the accelerator lab, or they can look right into the science labs. So once again, lots of activity, lots of things being visible, lots of visual synergies throughout the entire building. There's another structural tree column here spreading its branches to support this wide double height space. This sort of saddlebag on the right-hand side is the digital media art spaces, which do require higher ceiling heights so they can function more effectively, like the TV studio and learning. Okay, here is now a shot of the accelerator lab. We're now basically looking north. You can really now get a sense of that double height space with that second floor balcony on the right. So one would be up there for surveying everything that's taking place below. Here again, we see the structural tree columns with their wide branches allowing for lots of unobstructed floor space to promote ultimate flexibility. On the far left-hand side of the shot here, and when we're envisioning this in white tile, are the group study rooms and tutoring rooms that plug into this main space. Overall, really, the space will be filled with activity and learning and light. Okay, back to the floor plans, referencing again orientation. Our last section cut, we've now moved further north through the building. We're going to be cut through, and now we will see there's the film screening room, that sort of egg with its exterior terrace on top to the left. Also on the left is going to be this learning village on the second level, so maybe fostering outdoor learning classes or events, what have you, all again under the super roof. And then on the right is that floor pack of flexible classrooms. Here we are observing the stadium seating on top of the screening room. So in the foreground, a lecture is being conducted. And then just to the right, off to the distance, there is some informal gathering taking place. And I know I'm sounding repetitive, but once again, all under the shade of the super roof. Okay, we're now going to quickly tour the plans of the Culinary Institute and the Event Center. These are both one-story buildings. They do have mechanical wells on top of them, so in effect, they're masked to be two-story buildings. Once again, we're going to start at the south edge of the site of the plan, and we will head north. This yellow square there is the demonstration kitchen theater, capable of seating 100 people, including table rows. The demo theater forming the northern half of this gateway moment from the entry road off Farrell. Very visible all around, clearly. Learning will be on display. Demonstrations could be video and then broadcast through all different parts of the campus. Connected to that space is the Foundations Kitchen, that dark pink to the right, where students begin learning their basic cooking skills. This red arrow here demarcates entry into the building, and once you walk into the building, again, lots of programs and activity on display. There's 2 classrooms that are to the south, and then the pastry baking kitchen to the left upon entry. If we were to stay outside this building and walk along the western edge of the building, one could also see into the advanced skills kitchen, into the servery, into the dining room. Very dynamic and visually branding experience when you're walking along the Culinary Institute. Okay, in light pink here is the hospitality management program, complete with its own lobby and mock guest rooms. From the lobby, one will be able to look through a glass wall here to see into the mock guest rooms. So one will be able to really see, once again, learning on display, these mock rooms being used for hospitality-oriented real-world scenarios. Continuing north, there's going to be, well, let me state here, there is loading that is off to the right. We have tried to minimize the size of loading as much as possible. We do have a materials management consultant on board helping us understand the size of the trucks that will need to service this area. I will say that we have consolidated loading for both buildings, which has allowed us to have only one curb cut off Farrell that again would feed the loading dock for both of these buildings. This light color in orange are the event breakout rooms used by the convention center, the event center, excuse me, or the campus at large. They are also configured for flexibility to serve a variety of events. They've got the visible walls between them to create different scales of meeting opportunity. The breakout rooms spill out onto an events plaza, once again, capable of supporting all kinds of outdoor gathering and learning events. This gray knuckle between the buildings houses the restrooms. Okay, now into the event center itself, the main entrance is going to be from the south, from the campus side. There's a very long pre-function space, elongated the entire span of the front porch of the event center. So being in there, really enjoying wonderful views of the San Jacinto Mountains. One could have a drink and socialize before an event. There are 4 main event rooms inside that can host all throughout the campus. Different locations in the Culinary Institute. You could be inside in the accelerator at the stadium stair and seeing someone cook. Maybe you're waiting for a bus and you can see someone cooking. So we think that's extremely exciting. And then lots of glass, as you can see, all around the space so people can enjoy looking in and seeing culinary learning on display. Okay, we are going to conclude our tour. There's only 2 shots left. These are repeat images that we've seen, overall shots of the campus. This one, again, we're zoomed in, looking east, the entire western edge populated with variously scaled outdoor spaces that also support outdoor learning, gathering, and they synchronize with indoor educational and social spaces, really help blur the line between inside and outside, very much in the traditions of Palm Springs design, yet with the 21st century bend to it due to the educational mission behind it. And our last shot, once again, the overall shot of the campus. Obviously, we're looking west towards the mountains, taking in the entire campus, north to south, from Baristo to Farrell, expressing itself to the community along Farrell, and then opening itself up to the San Jacinto Mountains to the west. I think it's here we were going to replay the video just one more time. And then I don't know if you want to pause there for questions or comments. And then I know Gene's going to talk about the original principles and how they connect to the schematic design. I know that was a lot.
Mitch, do you all have any comments at this moment, or would you rather? You can do it now or after Jean's presentation. Okay. All right. We have Jean Gath, the Pfeiffer Partners.
We're doing me?
We're in it, yes.
Testing. This doesn't seem to be very loud. Is it loud enough?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
You can always hear me. Thank you. Can you hear?
Is it on?
It is.
Green light's on.
Here, I'm Jean Gath, the principal with Pfeiffer Partners. Very excited to be here. We started out, myself in particular, about 4 years ago, in developing the overall program and master plan for the campus. And as part of that, we developed a series of design guidelines. And it's exciting to see how the project has advanced. It's always a little bit mixed emotions when you give up a project to somebody else to take from a very early concept plan into implementation. You never quite know where it's going to go, but we're really pleased with where it's ended up. We feel that it's held true to the principles that we established as part of the master plan. And we've been fortunate enough to continue on in the project as the advising architect and watching this and continuing to provide input as it's advanced from the master plan to schematic design. As part of the master plan, we established a series of design principles that would establish a framework that we would give to the architect, which ultimately was Mitch and his team at WRNS, to advance the master plan from a concept level into schematic design that would ultimately move into implementation. And while they're called master plan principles, they don't deal just with the architecture. I think they deal with much more than that. They deal with the program that's inside the buildings, the arrangement of the program within the buildings, the aesthetics, and then how all of that is organized on the campus. And I wanted to just take you through the master plan principles and illustrate how we think they've been achieved through a very creative and very innovative design. And it starts with being forward thinking. And forward thinking isn't just about the architecture, well, that's an element of it. It's about all of the spaces in the building and how they will be able to be used not only day one, but for many, many years into the future. We can't predict the future, but what we know is the future will change, how education is offered is going to change, and we need to create, and Mitch and his team has done a very excellent job. We need to create highly flexible spaces so they work very well today, they'll work very well 10 years from now, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. So it's about being forward thinking, not only in the architecture, but also in the planning and configuration of the spaces within it. We feel this campus will work very well long into the future. We also think that the design is one that will be timeless. It's always challenging to create an architecture that's both of today, is contemporary, but that won't feel old or dated in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And we think Mitch and his team have done an excellent job of that. Along with the forward thinking is the notion that learning happens everywhere. The one thing we have understood from working with academic institutions is that a small part of the learning actually happens in the classroom. The learning happens both there, but very much in the interaction of students with faculty, students with staff. So it is a campus that allows and encourages and fosters learning to happen everywhere. And we think that's important in forward thinking. Student-centric. What's it mean to be student-centric? It's about understanding the student, understanding how they relate to one another, understanding how they relate to the education that they're receiving. And to do that, you'll notice that there's a variety of spaces for students. It's not just one place for students. Students have spaces indoors, outdoors, upstairs, downstairs, within enclosed spaces, within outdoor spaces. So student-centric to us is about variety and being able to respond to students in a very innovative way. Students gather everywhere on campus. I think Mitch and his team have done a great job of designing spaces that are inside, outside, and that recognize that students gather in very different ways, depending on what they're doing on the day, depending on the time of day they're there. So it's about providing the adequate spaces, more than adequate spaces for students to gather. There's also, and this was one of the key principles when we started the project, about the community. How does this campus interface with the community? Well, it interfaces in a number of different ways. It interfaces architecturally, aesthetically, how it relates to Farrell, to the neighbors, the context within which it's located, but it also engages with the community on the campus itself. So this is about bringing the campus and the community together in a variety of very innovative ways, making the community very much a part of the campus, not just in a formal way, but also in an informal way. So lots of places for the community to feel welcome on the campus and to engage with the campus. For instance, the Mobility Hub. It's a place not only for the students, but also for the community alike to come to campus, providing a variety of different ways for students and the community to arrive on campus, whether it's by private automobile, by Uber, by mass transit. This is a campus that really reaches out to the community on all of its sides. Certainly, the Culinary Institute is a great kind of formal place for the community to engage with the campus. It's a place to see education in culinary arts being offered, but also a place through the demonstration kitchen. And this was one of the programmatic elements that I think Mitch and his team have developed extremely well. This is a place where you could bring a chef from the community in to have a special demonstration, to have lectures about the culinary activities within the greater Palm Springs area. So it's a great opportunity to bring the community onto the campus and provide them the opportunity to enjoy the campus. The event center is certainly both an academic space, a place for learning, but also a great opportunity for the community to come onto the campus. This is a space that hosts a variety of activities. It has meeting spaces, it has large gathering spaces, indoors and outdoors. It is a gesture to the community, but it's a place where the community feels welcome and can engage with the campus on multiple levels. Merging inside and outside. This was fundamental to one of the design principles that we established early on. And I think it's fundamental to the character and quality of the Palm Springs area. This notion that sometimes you're inside, sometimes you're outside, the lines are blurred, you don't know, you're sitting outside in the cafe, feels indoors, but you easily move from inside and outside. So you can see a very strong visual connection that's been created in the campus between inside and outside. We think that's a lovely play of bringing the inside out and bringing the outside and the landscape and the character inside to the campus. Another example, and this again was one of the master plan principles, was to look at the outdoor space, not just as landscape or areas left over that aren't dedicated to parking and buildings, but instead to make the landscape and the outdoor areas part of the educational experience. And that's done not only through how the site is organized, how the landscape is organized, but also through the creation of these outdoor classrooms. So the education can occur not only inside, but outside. And I think Mitch and his team have been really creative in establishing these outdoor spaces that are both a roof at one time, but they're also a place to bring students together, a place for lectures and activities. I'll go on and on about the merging of inside and out because it's an important element about this. But you'll see that there's a seamless integration in the design of this campus between inside and outside. And I think the imagery here shows the variety of outdoor spaces that just merge and blend in with some of the inside spaces. Intuitive and welcoming. We always thought of this campus as one where anyone coming, whether it's first-time visitor, faculty member, first-time student, would intuitively know their way around campus, that it wouldn't have to rely on a lot of signs and guidance, but they would know where the front door is, where the front door is to the campus, where the front door is to buildings, where they should gather. And I think the organization of the campus has been very good in achieving this very intuitive way of how you enter the campus and how you move through the campus. About contextual materiality, one of the very early discussions we had with the Architectural Alliance, and I'll never forget this, was we do not want a campus that replicates modernism of the 1950s. What we want you to do is take the principles that gave rise to that architecture and think about what are the principles today that would give rise to the architecture. To not replicate modernism, but to replicate the thought process that went into that architecture. And again, I think WRNS has done an excellent job of thinking about sustainability, thinking about roofs that encapsulate spaces, and bringing all of that into the architectural character. So while they've used regional building materials in the buildings and in the landscape, they've also reflected in the overall design this next step in what we think modernism is. And I think they've been very creative in doing that. One of the things that we're excited about in the architecture is the sun shade, the notion of reflection and what sun does to building materials throughout the day. It changes the look and aesthetics of a building depending on the time of day. It's true in modernism and it's true in the architecture that's been created. Finally, one of the things that was fundamental in this was to create an architecture that reveals. So what do we mean by that? So much of particularly campus architecture over the years have been about buildings that contain the activity. You can't tell from many buildings on a campus whether or not inside that building is art, whether it's science, whether it's a library, because it's all contained within the shell of the building. What this campus does and what the architecture does is allows all of that energy and activity that's going on inside to be transmitted to the outside. It's not hiding it behind sterile walls. Instead, it's revealing it. And one of the principles that we developed was, as you pass by the campus, we had the sense of curated views, allow the community to look into the campus in a way that teases what's going on inside. So the whole notion that you see in the middle slide of this window out to the campus is really also a window into the campus. So you begin to see the energy and activity that's going on inside the buildings as you go around the outside of the buildings. We think that architecture is really compelling in that way. And finally, sustainability. Every aspect of this design reflects a real commitment on the part of College of the Desert to create a very sustainable, resilient approach. It should be and will be a model of sustainability to students. The notion is, let's make the buildings in the landscape part of the educational experience of students to understand how sustainability influences their life, how it influences the greater environment that it's within. So you've heard a lot about that, not only in terms of sunscreen, but also in terms of the landscape environment, the notion of stormwater retention on site. All aspects of that are part of the learning environment here on campus. But we're extremely excited to be at this point, having sort of germinated an idea several years ago and watching it change and evolve. And we think get much stronger than we imagined even at the outset of the project. So we're excited to see this and certainly open to comments and questions, and all of the input that we received during the master plan, we think has been transmitted well and implemented in the design as it's evolved.
Thank you, Jean. So any comments or questions from the panel?
I do have comments for that. I am Rita Lamb, I'm mayor of Cathedral City and very proud. This is my first experience being part of, having an architect, the renderings from start on a project. Usually I have to go after the building is built and, I work with what I've got. So this is positively brilliant. And I'm just thrilled to see the different perspectives, provided by the architect's rendering, and especially the culinary. I just, I had a vision in my head of what it was gonna look like, and then to see it, really on display was just beyond precious. And I totally respect and appreciate pedestrian walkways. Those were, that the students are safe and feel that they're important and know that they're moving through the campus is particularly important. The gentleman from the Palm Springs the architect, who talked about the quad. It seemed like there were a lot of areas where students gathered, but perhaps, highlighting that might be important going forward. And then as a former teacher and school principal, areas where I could lecture and yak on and on and on about nothing, are always important to me. And how, this is kind of in the weeds, but how would an instructor, have a microphone available? I didn't. And that's probably in the weeds about it. I'm sure that something is going to be accommodated, but that would be important, so for the students. And then I was very sensitive to Flynn's comments from the community, because Farrell is a well-traveled road, and sensitive to the traffic patterns as the entrance to that. But I think this is an unbelievable project. And I particularly was interested in the idea of housing going forward, because I could see this project being such an attraction, for the Film Institute and the Culinary Institute and Hospitality, not only statewide, but nationally and worldwide. And housing is always going to be a top priority. So those are my comments just right off the top of my head, but thank you. And I'm just thrilled and proud to be part of this.
Just want to say thank you to the team for incorporating some of the comments that we had at last week's listening session in Palm Springs. Appreciate you turning those around so quickly. In terms of some of the things that were discussed relative to the area along Tockwitz, the modifications that have been made to the driveway on Farrell. I do hope that you'll continue to look at that in the design development phase and work with the city's engineering team in looking at how we might make that more successful based on the comments that were received from the community. Again, the landscaping and some of the things that you mentioned today help to address the comments that we received last week. So appreciative to the team for listening to the comments that have been given. I do admonish you to take into consideration some of the comments that you've had today. And as you move forward in the design development phase, to consider those as this campus project moves forward. So thank you to the team. Appreciate that.
Robert, do you have any further comment?
I do want to say thank you to both Viper Partners and to WRNS Studio. Most of you don't know the tremendous amount of work the team has put in over the last 4 months, including a lot of late nights and weekends sacrificed for this project. So it has to be said explicitly, thank you very much for going above and beyond in that regard. I'm going to say a few more comments about next steps in a moment, but as far as what you've seen in the presentation, I think we have a shared sense that this is the end of the beginning in terms of the process. The schematic design is the first step, and I will say more about that in a moment. But we have heard the comments both from the Planning Commission meeting, from the variety of other parties who have reached out to us independently. And all of that is still under consideration within the umbrella that has been presented today. So I want to say that, and that you go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you. And I will get in the weeds with Rita a little bit. So there's a lot that goes into that to set up classrooms that are this type. We currently have a system, even when we're in the high schools, that we have certain type of equipment that we use. And thanks to our great IT team, we are throughout the valley providing that. Some of the simple things is this learning lab. We'll have a regular class pull up in there, and they'll just put on a microphone and pull some movable walls and have a class. And then 2 hours later, it's a study area. And so those things are going to be worked out, and the commitment of the college and especially our new Vice President of Instruction, Val Garcia, is that we look into ways in which we're managing our buildings, so it's better for not only the faculty and students, but it's better for everybody to come and learn. So there's a big commitment toward that, and this is the biggest project that we're going to be concentrating on that. So that will be a concern of ours, and when we're staffing and doing all that. I have to say that I've worked with some smaller groups in the process, including student services, and my fellow director, Jessica Enders, over there is helping me try to figure out where my I's are crossed, no, the T's are crossed, my I's are dotted. Well, my I's may be crossed by the end of this. But just looking into how it functions for a student coming into just simple things as registration, or a student coming in and says, I have need for housing, or I have need for food. And because we address those issues as well. So to see how it's developing as far as student services and how it's going to be more forward thinking, and it's going to be better for the student, that we're not so departmentalized that, oh, well, no, you got to walk over here to get that, but now you need to walk over here to get that. We can do kind of a one-stop shop for our students and be able to help. That I'm very appreciative of all the internal people that have been helping with that. I personally get really excited as an educator about the forward thinking of this campus, but also that indoor-outdoor, that little amphitheater on top of the film screening room is just wonderful to me, because I can see it up and you can have those 4 rooms that are right to the right of it as you're looking at it, have that open up and be a great event space, a great community space. I see that as being very viable, that if we have a healthcare conference up there that did in with the labs and everything else, I just see that not only were our what we would consider traditional students, even though community college students are not all traditional to begin with, but I see it to where we have industry partners come in, or we have somebody come in and do a special event, that we're able to open that up to not only our students and the community, but that businesses will come in and utilize this space in a meaningful way and help our students be forward thinking as well. So there's just a lot of great nuggets along the way. And as they said, we're not done yet, but I appreciate all your effort. And I know, Gene, it was really hard for you to give Mitch all those compliments throughout your presentation, but you did a good job. But just to see it, and Gene was, I was there when we interviewed you guys over 4 years ago, and just to see where it's come and how you helped us develop what we're looking at now, and then the process, I'm just really appreciative of all that. So are there any other questions from this point of view? Okay, well, I think Robert has a presentation about next steps.
Hey, everybody. Let's talk a little bit about what happens next. As a quick review or overview of something that we've talked about before, the American Institute of Architects defines technically 5 phases in a typical project, starting with schematic design, and then followed by design development, construction document creation, bidding, and then construction administration. Now, we have completed the schematic design for this project as of today. Thank you very much for all your effort to make that happen. What this means is that we have finished our exploration for the project. We have arrived at conclusions regarding the massing of the project, the concepts and functions for the different spaces. The space planning and basic adjacencies are well understood at this point. The character and look of the project is, I think, sufficiently documented. The building systems and structure, especially the structure of the building, are understood at a fundamental level. We don't have all the details and calculations done by any stretch of the imagination, but we know how the building will stand up. And we have arrived at a site design that incorporates circulation for vehicles and pedestrians, access to all the different elements of the project, that at this point is cohesive, though subject certainly to further development. We'll talk about that in a moment. Specifically, the purpose of this schematic design process was to complete the schematic design package from March of 2021, which was at about 60%, and we started, has now advanced to 100% complete. This sets the stage for our subsequent phases of development and very critically prepares us to meet with the Division of the State Architect. I'm pleased to state that we are going to have our first meeting with them to present this project next week. So we are moving immediately forward with that direction from the Board of Trustees. And of course, along the way, we will continue to verify our budget. Now, the next phase of work, design development. The best way to state what design development is about is to say that it's about refinement. We know what the big pieces are, but when you take something from the scale of being literally visible from the air as you're landing in Palm Springs Airport, to the scale of how we experience the building and make use of it on a day-to-day basis, there's a great deal of detail that has to be built into the entire process. So we call that refinement. Over the next few months, then we will be hashing out the materials and building systems in a great deal of detail using the input and guidance of our engineers and experts. We will continue to develop the features of the site. Those of you who still have comments about various features and aspects of the site, including things like where the mobility hub is located and such, we will continue to study those items. We will continue to coordinate with our partners and stakeholders. Their input has been super valuable to us, and we want to continue that collaborative process. We also hope to engage in public outreach along the lines of what happened last week with the Planning Commission for the City of Palm Springs. We invite that kind of interaction, and we hope that other cities and interest groups throughout the valley will contact us with their own unique perspectives so that we can talk to them about the project and understand their needs perhaps. Specifically, in addition to the, let's say, interesting work of utility coordination and making sure that we've crossed all the technical T's and dotted the technical I's. Get that one right?
Yeah.
All right. We will, as I mentioned, submit these schematic plans to DSA. Those of you who have not worked with the Division of the State Architect, haven't had that joy, may not understand that they have a great deal of input into how this process works, into what the final product will be. And so engaging them at this stage of the project is appropriate, and it will engender changes and shifts in directions that we can't really anticipate at the moment, but it is always a collaborative process, so we're looking forward to that. The goal will be, of course, to finalize the design through this phase and then set ourselves up for a streamlined construction documenting phase in which we hammer out the actual bid documents and specifications that will be put out on the street, as we say, for public bid when the time is right. I'm going to give you an overview of our project schedule here in just a minute, but I wanted to add as kind of a footnote. We mentioned that there would be various studies going on. Mitch mentioned a solar study. We've talked about traffic and parking. This is really the phase now of the project in design development where all of those technical studies really come to the fore. So those of you who still have concerns about the number of parking spaces, whether it's too many or too few, how we get in and out of the campus with driveways, that's all going to be refined now during this phase. And it's going to be nailed down permanently. so that when we get to the point of actually completing the construction documents in the next phase, those things will all be known to us. So as I mentioned, that process of potential continued outreach and collaboration around the valley, those conversations can continue in that forum. So the overall schedule in kind of a high altitude view. This is June of 2023. We've completed the schematic design as of today. From July, or really from tomorrow, moving forward through November, we will have the design development phase. And then we will immediately move into the construction document phase, going from December of this year till October of next year. That is a lengthy process, given the weight of technical information that has to be produced. That phase of construction documents, I'm lumping into that the process of submitting the final, I say that in quotes, construction plans to DSA. They will conduct at that point a full plan check review, and they will certify the project as being ready for construction at the end of that process. We will then engage in bidding, and that will be a publicly bid project. So those of you who I know are watching this from the construction background and are interested in that, stay tuned for late 2024. We will start construction following the bidding phase and award of contracts by the Board of Trustees, hopefully in November of 2024, and begin approximately a 2-year period of construction on site. And I'll warn everybody in advance, that construction will appear slow at first because it will be underground. We will be doing all the utility work, earthwork that happens behind the fence and below your sight line, but it will be happening and it will be intense. So stay tuned for all that. And of course, we hope to continue to keep our community advised as to our progress as we go. So the bond website that we posted all these materials on is still available. And you can always contact the bond office here at COD and ask for me, Robert Rauscher, or you can ask for Dr. Scott Atkins at his own personal contacts at the college, and we'll be able to talk to you about wherever we are at that moment. All right.
Thank you, Robert. Anybody have any further comments for Robert? Anything else about the project? Okay. I appreciate your time. So as we wrap up the completion of the schematic design phase and move on to the next steps, I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge and thank my co-chair, Robert Rauscher, Pam Hunter, one of our consultants, and everyone at Moss Companies. 2 other consultants, Doug Watson and Kate Hazen, thank you for your help. Mitch and Jean and their talented teams at WRNS Studios and Pfeiffer Partners, and my fellow members of the project management team from Desert Hot Springs, Cathedral City, and Palm Springs. When we started out with directions from the Board of Trustees to expedite completion of the schematic design, incorporating their specific changes in a series of public meetings over 4 months, we accepted the charge without exactly knowing what we might encounter along the way. This was uncharted territory insofar as the process goes. As we said before, the normal schematic design process itself is very collaborative and consultative, but mostly not a public one. So this was new to us, and we hope we did you well. I want to thank the 3 West Valley cities who answered our call to be a part of the public process. Each city agreed to designate a member to join our team, helping facilitate the transition to a public process. Each of you was invaluable to the process and also the outcome, providing input and feedback and aiding in our ability to maintain effective communications along the way. The end product is better because of your contribution. I also want to thank the college department, staff members, and consultants who accepted the additional tasks and responsibilities associated with this new process without hesitation. Thank you to the IT department, maintenance and operations, public safety, the public information officer, and the president's office for your support every step of the way. Thanks to all of you. With the completion of the schematic design, we have successfully accomplished our goal as directed by the Board of Trustees. The work of this project management team concludes with our thanks for a job well done. This is not, as Robert has stated, however, the end of the project planning and design. Rather, it's the end of the beginning. From here, Moss Companies and the design team will begin work with the Division of State Architect, finalize the design and construction drawings before returning to the board for approval of construction contracts to build the Palm Springs campus.